Welcome, and my name is Jenny Kwan. I'm the Member of Parliament for Vancouver East, and thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule this morning to join us at this press conference. Let me introduce the guests that are sitting around me in no particular order. First off, let me introduce Dr. Kim, who is the Vice President of the Korean Senior Citizens of Greater Vancouver, who is also, by the way, the host of our event today. And thank you so much for allowing us to gather here and have the press conference at your center. And then I'd like to also introduce Satsuko Norimatsu, who is the founder of the Peace Philosophy Center and a representative of the Japanese Canadians supporting Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day. We have then a representative from the Canadian Philippine Solidarity for Human Rights, Perry Sorio, and also a representative of McGuinty, BC, and as well a descendant who will share his story shortly. We have then Augusta Lockhurst, who is a social worker and a descendant of the Imperial Japanese concentration camp victim in the Dutch East Indies. And then we have Paul Johnson, the former Beijing Bureau Chief of Global TV and director of the documentary Unit 731, How America Exploited Japan's Biological Weapons Crime, which was produced in 2007. And then we have Lorena Serafico, right? Serafico, who is with the Committee for Domestic Workers and Caregivers' Rights. Last but not least, many of you already know, we have Tekla Litt, who is the co-chair of Canada Alpha and president of the BC Alpha as well. And ALPHA, by the way, stands for the Association for Learning and Preserving the History of World War II in Asia. We will each say a few words about the issue before us, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So I will first begin. The issue before us is my call for the Canadian government, for the federal government, to declare December 13th as Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day. 10 years ago, the UN Security Council officially recognized and condemned sexual violence in conflict as a tactic of war and impediment to peace building. In 2015, as a response, the UN General Assembly proclaimed June 19th of each year the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence in Conflict. The intent of this proclamation is to raise awareness of the need to sexual violence in conflict, to honor the victims and survivors of sexual violence across the globe, to pay tribute to those who have lost their lives and those who continue to dedicate their lives towards the eradication of these crimes against humanity. While the persecution of sexual violence, including rape, sexual slavery, forced prostitution, forced pregnancy, forced abortion, forced sterilization, and forced marriage employed in conflicts as a political act is a relatively recent phenomena. Its enactment, however, is not. Large-scale, systemic utilization of sexual violence has been used throughout history as intentional, deliberate tactics to assert power, dominance, and to dehumanize the opponent and attack their identity. This type of violence falls outside of military needs and adds tremendous cruelty and suffering to already violent conflicts. One of the first cases of international law dealing with sexual violence in conflicts was the International Military Tribunal for the Far East World War II in 1945. In the trial, several people were found guilty of rape on the basis of command responsibility during the Nanjing Massacre, where an estimated 20,000 to 80,000 Chinese women and girls were raped and some 300,000 people were killed. Western eyewitness in Nanjing described the atrocities as hell on earth. Iris Chang's book, The Rape of Nanjing, argues that many more people could have been tried for the atrocities in Nanjing, but justice was set aside for many perpetrators for political reasons. Rape was listed as a crime against humanity in the Allied Control Council law in the Nuremberg trials, but there were no prosecutions that followed from it. The non-recognition of sexual violence as a political act and tactic of war, and the non-recognition of the gendered nature of such violence hinder efforts to seek accountability and justice. This adds to the ongoing failures of peacekeepers and other authorities to protect women and men from rape and sexual violence during the war and conflict worldwide. Over the course of the Second World War, an estimated 200,000 women and girls from Japan, China, Korea, Burma, Indonesia, the Philippines, and other occupied territories in Asia were tricked, kidnapped, or coerced into working in brothels to serve as quote-unquote comfort women. The effects of sexual violence echo across generations through trauma, stigma, poverty, and poor health. Today, the world we live in continues to be haunted by conflict, militarism, and the senseless loss of human lives through warfare. The UN currently recognizes 19 countries in conflict where the sexual violence is especially problematic. The Government of Canada has repeatedly stated its commitment to advancing human rights and the gender equality both at home and at the international level. It is therefore pertinent that large-scale acts of violence in history are remembered and studied so that atrocities in the past and present are not repeated. It is only through the recognition and remembrance of historical wrongs that we can find healing and reconciliation. In this spirit, the spirit of never again, on November 30th, 2017, I called on the government to establish December 13th of every year as Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day. As the years pass, there are not many surviving victims left. It is my hope that the federal government will work with me to get this job done. The Nanjing Massacre should not be a forgotten Holocaust. That is what it is known as. Victims of sexual violence should not be forgotten. And I'm very honored to have the support of Canadians from all walks of life for this initiative. In particular, I'd like to thank the special guests that are here today that I have introduced. And I want to make a special recognition, actually, to Ms. Satsuko Norimatsu. Why am I saying that? Because I think it's particularly difficult for those of Japanese descent, of the Japanese Canadian community to step forward on this initiative. And that courage is absolutely incredible to me, and it is to be recognized and for all of us to say how much we appreciate that. It takes a lot of courage to speak up and to speak out for justice. And this effort, I want to say, is not about targeting anyone, but rather it is about unity. It's about bringing us all together under one umbrella, the human race. We're all connected as peoples. When atrocities happen, it impacts all of us, and not just the victims. Histories are important. Why? If there's anything that's valuable about atrocities of the past, histories that would just rip your heart out, the value of that is for us to learn from it, to always remember it, to honor the people who are victims of it, to say to the families that are of today that you are not forgotten, that your family has not been forgotten. And to honor them, the most important thing that we can do is to make sure that this never happens again. That's why this day of commemoration is so important for all of us. And I think Canada is well placed to do this. Canada has worked so hard over the years as a middle power country to earn our place in the international community. We have a reputation to be kind, to be fair, to be compassionate, to be humanitarianism as a forefront, to put that forward as a forefront to address global issues. So to that end, as a country who's advocated for peace for so long and who's been recognized for that, for us to declare December 13th every year as Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day, I think it will send a signal to the international community, the effort that we all need to put towards working towards peace. So thank you so much for being here today. And with that, I'm going to pass multiple mics over to the next speaker, and I'm going to ask Sujuko to say a few words.